I'm assuming for 30 days, Mr. Crane?
Yes, sir. 30 days.
Okay.
Man, what happened?
We need a motion? Or not necessary? No, we don't. Okay. Item 16, consideration of rescinding ordinance number 6655 due to the prospective bidder not wanting to proceed with the sale because of title issues. I have a motion by Ms. Mayo, a second by Mr. Latour. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 17, consideration of rescinding the following ordinances associated with adjudicated properties and further authorizing to
Move on 17, all
re-advertise
bullets.
Second.
said properties. A, ordinance number 6654, B, ordinance number 6665, and ordinance number 6594. Had a motion by Mr. Anderpont and a second by Mr. Guidry. On all bullets, sir?
Yes.
All bullets. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 18, consideration of adopting a resolution approving, let's see, the staff recommends that the item be deferred until our regular meeting on September 22nd.
Motion to defer to 22nd.
Got a motion deferred by Mr. Millen, second by Mr. Brame. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 19, consideration of adopting resolutions for the following items as requested by the Human Services Department.
Move on
A,
19, all bullets.
authorizing a grant agreement in the amount of $96,000 for the Strategies to Empower People, which is the STEP program. B, authorizing a grant application for an Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, for fiscal year 2016. Had a motion by Mr. Anderpont, second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 20, there's no action necessary. Item 21, consideration of adopting a resolution approving a contract extension between the police jury and Mountain Brook Water Distributors for bottled water for an additional
Move on
12-month
21.
period.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. McMillan, a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any discussion? Mr. Brame?
Whoever can answer this, is Mountain Brook Water Distributors local? Does this go out for bid?
No mountains or brooks.
It did go out for bid, Mr. Brame.
Oh, yeah.
It's an additional 12-month period. Is that satisfy you?
Well, I'd like to know if they were a local company, and if any local company did bid it.
Kentwood, Louisiana.
Is that it?
Mountain, it says Mountain Brook Water Distributors.
I don't,
Is there an attachment that shows?
No, not on this one.
Do we know if
I
there's
think our
any?
purchasing agent is not here at the moment.
Okay.
We could get back with you with the answer,
Yes, sir. That'd be
or
fine.
we can defer, whatever you want to do.
Well,
Well,
I don't know if there's a time.
I'm good, Mr. President.
You're good? All right. Is there any further discussion on 21, on the water? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 22, consideration of authorizing the parish purchasing agent to either advertise for bids or purchase utilizing state contract purchasing procedures for the following. A, purchase of one 2016 or newer half-ton four-door pickup truck, and B, purchase of a replacement diesel engine and fire water pump. And I had a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Guidry. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 23, take appropriate action on bids received by the parish purchasing agent for the
23 and all
following.
bullets.
A is one crossover 4x2 hydraulic excavator, B, one 2016 or newer heavy haul truck, and one 2016 or newer truck-mounted pothole patcher, C, one 2016 or newer SBA 6x4 construction dump truck. Had a motion by Mr. McMillan, second by Mr. Barris. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Mr. Barris?
Is Pothole Patcher the actual name of that?
Truck-mounted pothole patcher. I'm surprised that I even was able to get that out. You certainly couldn't say it fast three times in a row. Well, Hal could, because he's the auctioneer, but,
Pothole patcher.
so do you have more questions? Maybe Mr. Wainwright can answer your questions on the pothole patcher?
Wise choice.
What's your question, Mr. Barris?
Is it really, that's the name?
Don't abbreviate.
Pothole patcher?
We're gonna go with it for the night, yes, sir. They're made by various manufacturers if you're looking for something else. And I might call up here on our memo, but it's a quick fix patcher. Basically, if something goes out and does it really quick, then our crews will typically come back with a permanent patch as soon as they can get out there. But this is something that kind of keeps traffic flowing safer on a quicker.
So would that replace the asphalt in the back of a truck and a guy getting out with a shovel out there beating it in the pavement?
That would be considered a pothole patcher as well.
Well, this sounds much more professional, and it may even do a better job. So, yeah, it's truck mounted, so if Mr. Barris is okay with the pothole patcher.
Unbelievable.
It seems like everybody else was.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 24, consideration of
24.
accepting the River Bluff Park Development Phase 2A project as substantially complete. I have a motion by Mr. White and a second by Mr. Farnum. Any discussion? Any objections? This is probably really a good deal. Why don't somebody tell us what Phase 2A was?
Dean's in the back.
Go ahead, Dean. Give us an update. We hadn't heard anything about the park in the bluff.
Not needed.
Beautiful.
No better place, is there, Mr. White?
God's country.
Phase 2A was, we constructed a small restroom facility to handle the boat launch, and we also put in the sewer treatment plant to handle the entire park.
That's good, and much more to come.
You want, Dean, if you want to mention about the next phase, is it starting to be
Phase
advertised?
2B will be coming out soon. Okay, we sent the advertisement out today. Phase 2B will be the, just give me a second.
It's okay. We kind of put you on the spot. I apologize for that.
So earlier this year, if you remember, we advertised and we had a project come in way over budget. So we went back and we removed the pavilion from that package, and we had some time to play with a little more of the details of the park. So Phase 2B will be coming out. We'll have the playgrounds, the swings, the splash pad. The playgrounds will actually have 2 age levels there. We'll be able to take care of ages 2 through 5 and 5 through 12. Have a little fitness area there, some of those same components you see at Prion that people like. Of course, picnic areas, water fountains, and so forth. Small walking loop around that area, along with the restrooms specific to that space, and all the parking areas and drives for the east side of the park.
Thank you. Mr. Brain, did you have a question?
I did. I just wanted to get Dean while he's up there, if you can give us maybe an update on what's going on at LaFleur and Prian, some updates on those projects?
Sure.
Sure.
So Prion Lake Park, we have recently wrapped up a construction effort there, wherein we corrected some foundational issues with the amphitheater. We also completed a project within that project, we stabilized the shoreline along Henderson Bayou, where we had some erosion issues, and it really was kind of an ugly area there, and revamped the kayak launch. All
All
that has
that looks good.
turned out pretty nice.
Where are we on LaFleur?
The Fleur. Still working through some design issues there. We do have a good conceptual. Right now, our architect is we have an erosion issue there on the south side, as y'all know, the old beach area. The way the old river comes through, it kind of creates an eddy there, and it just continues to erode that portion. So there's part of the design is to try and come out to the south with maybe a kind of a small peninsula. And what that'll do is block that off. Right now, all that sand that's leaving our park is going over to our neighbors, and they're constantly having to dig that out. So it's a real problem for them. And that area, by doing that, it'll also enhance the
Okay.
fishing for that peninsula.
All right, does that need to be done before we start on the other north side?
If it all works out, we're going to try and do it all at one time.
Okay. What's the timeline on that? Dane?
I don't know if I can give you an exact timeline, Mr. Brain, but I would tell you that the priority is the erosion. If we do not fix that, we probably won't have Israel LaFleur Park much longer. It's almost to the road or getting closer to the road. So the timeline will depend on how fast we can control the erosion issues.
Okay.
No, I don't want to leave it with it. You know, I don't like to avoid the questions, but honestly, right now, our architects are working with the engineers, and they're consulting with the Corps to see how all that's going to work out.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Brame. Mr. McMillan?
Hey, we had talked about possibly joint servicing with CCA or maybe some agencies to get a fishing pier there at some point in time. Is that still any talk going on, ongoing talk on that? Is that something that we could bring to the front burner to look at if we could move forward on that? I think it'd be an excellent idea. Right underneath that 210 bridge, a lot of people fish and crab, and there's a good opportunity for us to give them another place that they could do that. Have you followed up on any of that, Dean?
We have a conceptual in place. I think really it comes down to funding. How far do we want to go? So you know, the entire peninsula, when we go through this renovation, the entire place will be suitable for that fishing destination. You know, you look at Calcasieu Point, you look at Intercoastal, there's folks that are placing in the CCA tournament fishing off the bank. When we're done with this park, you know, upgrade, we'll be able to do the same thing there. As far as the wharfs go, we have them conceptualized. It'd be nice if someone would come forward and fund that. But, you know, so when we come forward and ask permission to move forward with that project, it'll be itemized out well enough that we can decide, or the jury can decide, what are we going to fund and what is available for maybe some other agency to fund. We're trying to shape it that way.
And the pier at Calcasieu Point is tremendous. Well-used, beautiful, well-kept. Thank you for what you've done there. I just know that I would like to see the same thing done at 210 right there. If it's possibly that we could get joint service agreements with other entities that would want to build something like that, because it'd be well-used by the outdoors people that don't have a boat. You said it right there. Number one question I get a lot of times is, where can I fish if I don't have a boat? Well, Calcasieu Point is one of those places because you have a pier and you have all the bait and everything right there. And, you know, we would have a similar type pier under 210 Bridge. Thank you, Mr. President.
Hopefully we can get that done pretty quick. Mr. Guidry said that he thought it could pay for that out of the Westlake Gaming Fund. Thought there was some funds in there. Isn't that right, Mr. Guidry?
I do believe, Mr. President.
We'll talk to the jury in that district, and maybe we could.
Maybe we can move that along, Dean, and get that done for Mr.
Yeah,
McMillan.
we'll get that done quick. Mr. Brain?
Write the check, we can build it.
Dean, since we're on Calcasieu Point, fuel and ice machines, is that something that we could maybe start looking at? Or is having fuel pumps for boats out there, is that something that we totally can't be done? Or an ice
You know, I
machine?
glanced around the room because there's folks who've, on the staff, that have kind of lived through that in the past, and there's reasons why that didn't go forward. We can certainly look in the files and get you an update on that,
Yeah, that'd
and tell you why
I mean,
we should or shouldn't, and certainly tell you why we didn't in the past.
Okay. A lot of people ask me that,
Yes, sir.
you know, how nice it'd be to have fuel pumps there. So I don't know if it's something that the EPA or whoever controls that, I don't know. I guess that's why I was asking.
Everyone has an opinion in that. So,
Yeah.
I think best is, I would like to follow up with you after, you know, let us look at the file and get back with you.
Okay, and the ice machines, you know, a public ice machine, I don't know, just something that go up and fill up their ice chest right there, they don't have to stop before they get there and have ice. Something also.
We looked into that, I want to say it was last year, maybe the year before. That's not that long ago that we looked into that. We can follow up
Okay.
with you on that as well.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Andrew Pont?
Let me comment on that for just a minute. I think we're opening up a can of worms, so DEQ's gonna get involved, and you spill fuel on the ground, let me tell you, we're gonna have to dig 10 feet down and 25 feet around to get that little drop of fuel off the ground. I can tell you, I will never vote for that.
I said that doesn't get in the water.
Mr. Gidry.
And I yield back.
And I think a little bit of what Mr. Brame is talking about is making it convenient for the residents of Calcasieu Parish, but also when you do that, I think you take away funding for people that have businesses that are around there that maybe need to use that as a funding mechanism for them. And we wouldn't want to do that.
Well, I didn't necessarily mean us as a public entity to do it, but, you know, put it in the private sector to do and have a location there.
Okay.
That-
That's what I was thinking, Mr. Dean maybe was a little bit hesitant on answering, because I know that's come up in the past, when there have been people that own local businesses for us for gas stations, saying, why would you do something like that when I have one?
Exactly.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, I did call him. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We appreciate you coming up, and I know you weren't expecting any of that. It wasn't on the agenda. Neither park that we discussed, but thanks.
Tried to help you out, Dean.
Okay, I think we had a motion in a second. I think we're beyond that now. 25, consideration of adopting a resolution of condolences to be forwarded to the family of the late Cyril Leonard. Mr. Farnham.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cyril Leonard was a pillar of the community for many, many years. He was one of the most generous individuals that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing in my life. A lot of stories have come out since his passing that nobody probably ever really knew, because he really only had one string attached to his generosity, is that you don't tell anybody where you got it. And he never wanted to be in the limelight. He was always a very modest individual. And I asked him one time, I said, Mr. Leonard, do you even know how much property you own? He says, I have no idea, but I have a lady that does. And he was one of the most, just a perfect individual in every way I can think of. And the entire community is going to miss him greatly, and like to send the condolences to his family.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Farnham. Is there, Mr. Anderpont?
Thank you, Mr. President. What Les says is true. What people don't realize is when he first came to Sulphur, he really, I'm not going to say he was broke, but he was not at the top of the world, and he started a State Farm agent, or was granted a permit to start a State Farm agency, and he was renting from Cyril Leonard. Over the years, that became a sideline, and we started building those buildings. But I'm going to tell you, I must have been on speed dial, because every time he had a difference of opinion between himself and planning and zoning, I heard about it. And I will tell you one quick story. One Friday afternoon, about 3 o'clock, he calls me, and on my caller ID, he must have called about 7 times. So I called his office, and his office manager, Sheila Connor, said, he's looking for you. I said, I know that now. He said, but let me give you a cell number. I said, don't worry, I got it. And I called him, and he was having a disagreement over a permit. And now you got to remember now, this is 3 o'clock on the Friday afternoon. He's headed to Holly Beach to his camp. And he dropped this load on my lap and wanted me to take care of it by Monday morning, because he wanted to pour slab. I got it done, but it was not easy, and I want to thank y'all for finally yielding.
Wow.
And look, one more thing. During the ice storm 1997, he came to the front door of my house and wanted to know how I stood on firewood. And I said, well, I'm about to run out. And about an hour and a half later, he pulled up with a trailer and had firewood on the back of his trailer for us to make and that's a friend.
You're right about that.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderpont. Okay, we had a motion by Mr. Farnham, second by Mr. Anderpont. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we adjourn, I want to say congrats to Mr. Latour. His wife had a beautiful baby girl yesterday. I think this is number 11 for y'all's family.
Congratulations.
And, if I may, Mr. President, anybody watching this on TV, I'll be brief, but we've had a very tense situation in this state the past couple weeks. And I just want to say, if you're watching this on CGov, even if it reaches one person, love your neighbor. Be kind to your neighbor. We are very representative here in Calcasieu Parish of the state of Louisiana in that we have a fabric of different racial backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, and I hope that makes us stronger. I believe that makes us stronger rather than makes us weak. And I ask people to remember that. And I ask you to be kind to your neighbor over the coming weeks. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hunter. I need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.